Hi, hello. So in this video we are going to see how we can debug both the runtime and the design time code. We already saw some examples in the previous tutorial, but this video is going to be more really how you can do it. So first of all, we are going to switch to command line. So you can do that using the Windows command line or the macOS terminal, but here because it's just convenient, I'm going to use a WebStorm terminal, which is pretty much like the Windows command line. So I'm going to take this one. You need to check what is the value of the Rx SDK environment variable. It needs to point to the SDK, and here it's not pointing to the right SDK. This is 2008. In here we want to point to 2105, which is the current version for now. And for that you can use the set command or the export if you're on the Mac. And it needs to point to the SDK folder. So here I'm going to do that. I'm going to look for the content of the folder. And it contains client lib, sample, standard lib. So how do debug work? So it's using ngserve from Angular. So if you're used to Angular project, it's not going to be something new. You need to launch the command inside the web app folder from bundle. So let's go to bundle. And here we need to launch a specific command, which is npm start with an API host parameter, and the API host parameter is a domain or IP that is from your Innovation Studio server. So here, my Innovation Studio server is 192, 168, 159, 131 on the port, and 8008. And here I don't mention the port 8008. If for some reason it's running on a different port, you would have to change something in the proxy conf.js file, which is here, because that's how we assume that it's going to be on port 8008 and protocol HTTP and not secure, which is the default value if you have like a local environment. So here we are in the right folder. We are on port 8008 non-secure. So I'm just going to put a command and validate. I'm going to pause the video because it's going to build the code, so it's going to take a bit of time, like maybe 1 minute the first time. And I'm going to resume when everything is ready. Okay, so now you can see that the ngserve has been triggered and everything is ready on the localhost 4200. And it actually launched the page on the localhost 4200. So I'm going to copy the link. So let's see what we can test. So here we should have one action. That is a sample action we created earlier in the previous tutorial. So I'm going to show how we can debug both runtime and design time. So I'm going to show runtime first. So we copy whatever is coming up to the 8008, paste it here. We have to log in again because it's a different session. And here we have pretty much exactly the same view, and it does exactly the same thing. Okay, so now let's see how we can debug something. We are going to launch F12 to show the web browser developer console. We need to see the files that we want to debug. So for that, let's go back to our code in libs, source lib actions or sample actions. So if you remember, the runtime code lies within the service.ts. So if we want to debug this file, we have a couple of options. The first one is we need to look for sample action -action .service.ts. So we do Control P, sample action .service.ts, which is here, and we have our code. So if we want to see what happens, we could, for example, put a breakpoint here, click, and here we stop here. So we can see the value of input parameter message and the input parameters another message. So we can debug using the web browser tool, so exactly like you would do with a regular Angular project. And of course, if you want to change something, let's say we want to change some code, we save, and after some time it's going to detect automatically that the file have changed. You will compile it again, and you can see that the page is going to reload automatically, and it has changed here to the right value to reflect what was in the code. Test hello world. So here we debug the runtime, and of course it will work exactly the same way for a view component. It doesn't really matter. So now let's see how it works for the design time. So here is our design time for our action. The thing is, I don't think the design time has a lot of interesting features, only the validation maybe. So let's take a view component instead this time. So we are going to just revert what we did, and let's take a view component. So for a view component, let's try to find one that was a bit interesting for the design time. So we had one for the star rating. We were displaying the adapter star rating component. So let's try to see what we can do debugging this one. So we have view designer. So sample star component, design, and we can debug, for example, the component. So the component doesn't have a lot of things. It has just, for example, this one. And the validation would be inside the design model. So let's say that we want to debug the component. We don't have any validation for, oh, we have a validation for the message. We could look at that as well. So sample component, sample star component design component yes. So same thing. Control P, sample star component design component.ts. So let's see what happens when we click on an element. You can see the value that is displayed. So if you don't want to use console log, do something like here is the value that has been clicked. Oops. So it's going to kick in. Okay, so the page has reloaded, and you can see here is the value that's been chosen, and we can still debug the code. So let's do the same thing for, let's revert. Let's go to the design model this time. So we're going to remove the breakpoint. Sample star component design model. And we can see the validation, which is here. And let's just check what happens when we don't have a message. So we can just remove something here. And you can see that when I change the value, it kicked the validation immediately. So in the model, we have some input properties like hidden message name styles. And we have nothing in the message. So we are going to have here a message cannot be blank. So we saw in this tutorial, very fast tutorial, we can debug, at least the JavaScript side of it. And once we'll put some Java code, we'll see how we can debug the Java code as well.